In this video I'm going to do a walkthrough of the exercise 2 that we had you start in class on September 10th. I'll go through the process of setting up the project in RStudio, bringing in the data, looking at its structure, running a few commands, and adding a new dichotomized variable back to that data set. So the first thing I'm going to need, of course, is the file. Now on this particular computer I have done a portable R install, and I put the files under the user directory on the C drive under SC Grambo. And notice I've also created a folder here where I'm going to store all my 241 projects. So it's at the level of these two folders. I've already got a normtemp folder in there. Let me go ahead and create a new folder for this project, Acupuncture. And then I'm going to go into that folder, and I've already copied the Excel file, so I'm just going to paste it into this folder. So I've got my source data already in here. So let's go ahead and open this file. And before we start moving it into RStudio, let's go ahead and just take a look at it, just so we know what we're dealing with. We have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 variables. It looks like 43 observations because the first row are titles. So we have 14 variables, 43 observations. So hopefully that's what we'll get when we move into RStudio. Looking at the structure of this file, there are no character variables, meaning alpha, like names or a ethnicity, race, or gender variable where they were actually using characters to describe the different levels of that variable. So everything looks numeric. Now we should notice that we do have some blank spaces which are missing values, and so that's something to be aware of when we go into RStudio. RStudio will naturally understand when we go using a CSV format. It will understand that these are missing values and code missing values the way that R prefers to do that, which is to use a cap NA, which you'll see when we get into RStudio. But we do have missing values in the data, so that's something to be aware of. So let's go ahead, and this is an Excel format. Let's go ahead and change this to a CSV format. So we do File, Save As, and we're going to put it in the same directory that we started from. And actually, I know that the exercise asks us to rename this as site18 underscore data. So I'm going to call it that right away. I'm going to do it in CSV format, and I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now I get a message saying, yeah, there's some features that are not compatible with CSV, so we say yes, that's fine. Now we're going to go ahead and close this. Sure, we can save those. Actually, we don't need to. We've already saved it. We refresh, and here we have our second file, Microsoft Excel, comma separated values file. So that's the file we need. So now let's go ahead and open RStudio. And first thing, let's go over some of the administrative things in RStudio of just how to set up our windows. So one thing I'm going to do is go to Tools and Options. Now if you're in a Mac version, you should have an RStudio menu option over here, and under that I believe it's Preferences. And so a couple of things. We have our R version, so that's in the user directory where I've got the portable install. Notice that I've already set a working directory here, and that's the 241 folder I showed you a moment ago. So it automatically knows that I want to put things in that 241 folder. I've unchecked all these other options, but I have left checked Restore Most Recently Open Project at Startup. So what that's going to do is reopen the project that I was last working on, and I've also, this option, saved the workspace to R data on exit. So what that's going to do is that any data that I'm working with in my project, it'll save that when I close automatically. So these options you can You can change these. Let's leave it like this for the moment and move on. Now the other thing I want to do is I want to change my pane layout. And we did this in class yesterday. Let me change this so that the console is up next to the source. The source is where my script file is going to be. The console is where the output of the commands is shown. And I'll let the workspace and the files tabs be in the lower portion. So now I click OK. Now I'm going to grab this bar and I'm going to move this window down so that I have a lot of white space up here. Same over here. And now let's do something else in preparation for working with data. Let's go ahead, and the first thing we should do is create a project. So let's start a new project. You can do that using the project icon here, or you can also use the project menu selection here. So I'm just going to stick with this, new project. Now we've already created a directory for this exercise. So let's go ahead and simply point at that directory. So we have an existing directory. We're going to browse to it, and I'm going to have to browse back to my user directory and find, this will be different for you obviously. So go back to our portable 241, acupuncture. So now I'm going to associate this project with the folder I created earlier, and I'm going to create a project. Okay. So I'm going to move this down again a little bit. So now we can see that the I already have some files in there obviously because I placed some in there. So what do we want to do at this point? Let's go ahead and before we do anything with the data, let's go ahead and create a script file. So go to File, New, RScript. Now notice it's opening a window here. So what I want to do is go ahead and save this file so that, you know, let's give it a name. And so I'm going to click up here on this oh, wrong icon. Let's go ahead and click on the Save Current Document, and it's going to prompt me for a file name. Notice it's already in my project directory, so I'm just going to call this acupuncture _ script. Save. And so now I have a document that I can start working in. So let's go ahead and go to our workspace here. Let's now import our data. And so we do import dataset from text file, and we're going to go to our Site 18 data CSV file. We're going to open that. Notice that the name we've given it is the one we wanted, so we don't have to change that. Now the first thing we have to note here is that this lower window is giving us RStudio's interpretation of the structure of this file. It's treating our headings, our column titles, as observations. So we want to make sure that we tell it, yes, we had a heading, so now it understands that those are variable names and not observations. Everything else should be okay. So now we can go ahead and import the data, and it automatically shows it to us, and we can look at all the variables. Now we can see that where we had blanks, it has now put NAs, right, indicating that's the indicator for missing values. So it looks like things have been properly imported. Here in our workspace we can see 43 observations of 14 variables. That's what we expected. Alright, now notice here that as I said in class, when we did the import data function, that generated some syntax that was used to actually import and show the data. Notice that we have multiple tabs up here in the source window. Here's our script file, here's our view into the data. So what we can do if we go back to the script file, we can actually grab these commands that RStudio ran. I'm highlighting them. Oops, sorry. Right-clicking, copy, and now I'm going to paste them into my script code so that when I come back to the script later, I can run this import function through my script file to recreate, to bring that data back in. Now, and also view it. Now notice that the carets here we do not want. That's not part of the syntax, so I'm just going to delete that. So there we go. Now we have our script file. We can actually do a double number sign and say this is exercise 2 script file. All right, whatever. Okay, so now we've got our data in. So let's go ahead and create create some syntax and start looking at the structure. So as we did in the normtemp example, we can just type in structure str and do site18 underscore data. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight that, and I'm going to go up here, and this little button right here, the run, I'm going to click that, and it's going to run the highlighted syntax, and it shows you in blue the syntax it ran, and here is our output. Again, it is showing us that we have a data frame, 43 observations on 14 variables. Here are the variable names, here are the variable types, integer, numeric, and then here are the values. Notice that, for example, PK5, for the first 5 values are actually missing. Okay, so now we can come back over here to our script file, and let's go down to a new line and simply enter in the next command, which we can do a summary of the data. Okay, go ahead and highlight that again. I'm using keyboard commands to do highlighting, but we can do it with our cursor, our mouse as well. Go ahead and run that, and now you have to scroll back up to see some of it, but now we've been given summary information on all of the different variables in the data set. Alright, so now we have structure and summary. Let's go ahead and make a note here about creating a new dichotomous variable called cron underscore greater than 30. Alright, so if we go back and look at our data again, we want to take this chronicity variable and we want to dichotomize it so that it indicates whether the chronicity is above 30 or not. So what we want to do is we'll use the same approach as we used with the normtemp data. And so the first thing we want to do is we want to copy the values in the chronicity variable to a new temporary variable that we can operate on, so we don't change the original variable. So let's use temp var as we did before, and so we're going to set the value of the temporary variable. Our data frame is called site18 underscore data. We use a $, and then the variable we're interested in is chronicity. Okay, so now that will create a new variable that is identical to chronicity. So the next thing we want to do is we want to take values within temp var and operate on them and change them according to our dichotomization rule. So we can just copy this down a row. Okay. And what we want to do is if things are less than, if the chronicity value in each row is less than or equal to 30, then what we're going to do is set the value equal to 0. I'm just going to copy this line, and if the value is strictly greater than 30, then we're going to set the value of this new temporary variable to 1. All right, so now we've created the new temporary variable. We've assigned 0 for those less than or equal to 30 and assigned a 1 in place of those values greater than 30. And so now what we have this new variable that's temp var, and so we can actually, if we just type it and hit return, that will actually display the variable. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to run these 4 lines of code. So I'm going to highlight them, go up here, click run. In my console window, I've now done the manipulation, and temp var is now a string of 0s and 1s. Okay, so the next step back in our script file is to add this variable back to the original data frame. So our data frame is site 18 underscore data, and we're going to create this variable called cron underscore gt30 greater than 30, and we're going to set that equal to temp var. Okay, that's all we need to do. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight this. Well, so let me go add one more line, and I'm going to view the resulting data frame. Okay, and so that's going to pop it up as a tab in this source pane that we're working in right here. So there we go. So I'll just view the entire data frame. So let's highlight these two lines and go ahead and run them. So it runs it, and now it pops up the window again, and I need to slide over here, but there's my cron GT30. And if you kind of eyeball that, the first three values are 10, 10, 40. That should go to 0, 0, 1. That looks right. So eyeballing it, it looks like it's okay. Going back to our script window, let's click over here. Notice that when the script file title is red, what RStudio is indicating to you is that you have code in this file that you have not saved. So you can just go up here to the disk icon, click Save, it turns to black. Now we've saved everything that's in the file. Now you may notice that I've done something slightly different than what I did with the normtemp data in class. With normtemp data in class, I did the following. When I added a new variable to the data frame, so let's do that again. I'm going to put a note here that says add variable as factor. So I'm going to create a new variable in the data frame, and let's call it cron underscore gt30 cap f for fact, for a factor. And I'm going to set that equal to as.factor temp var. That's the syntax we used in class. So let's go ahead and review. Okay, so let's go ahead and highlight this. See if this actually works. Run. Okay, so run it. Now let's scoot over. It looks exactly the same. The difference between these two is the following. So let's go back to our script file, and now let's, so it views the same, but now let's do a summary again of site 18 underscore data. Run that, and let's look at our output. So our last two variables, here's cron GT30. Now this gives a standard set of values for the summary. It just treats those zeros and ones as their numbers, and it calculates the, arithmetically calculates these different statistics that we asked for here. The minimum obviously is going to be 0, the maximum 1, and then you get these other values. One interesting thing, when you have a 0, 1 variable, the mean is going to be equal to the proportion of ones in the data. So we have 30% of the values are over, have a chronicity greater than 30. That's just a nice feature of using 0, 1 variables. Now if we look at the factor version of the cron variable, notice it's giving us a totally different summary. And the reason is because by creating a factor variable, we've said, look, this is not a numeric thing that you calculate means on. This is a categorical variable with 2 levels. So what it's given us in the summary is it says there are 30 observations in the data that have a cron GT30 value of 0 and 13 that have a cron GT value of 1. So we've told it that it's categorical and it's treating it that way. There's not a right or wrong answer of how you create a dichotomous variable. It's just a matter of how you're going to use it in subsequent analyses. And so many times it's easy to use the cron GT, the numeric version, and then when you need to use it like a factor, you can simply use this as.factor version and put cron GT30 in the parentheses. But so anyhow, that we'll talk more about factors later on. Sometimes they're helpful, particularly when you're looking at 2x2 tables or some kind of categorical tables that we'll be talking about when we get to categorical data analysis. All right, so now let's go ahead and save our file again. We're in this tab. Go ahead and save it. Let's go ahead and simply close out of RStudio. Let me make one other comment, is if you don't use the view statement to review the new data object, this tab here, after you've added the variable, will not necessarily automatically update to show the new variable. One easy way to update it is by clicking down here in the workspace. If you just click that data frame, that's the same as typing view, and it will update that variable so you can see it. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and stop here. Let's go ahead and just close out of RStudio. It's going to shut. And now that essentially is the end of the exercise. Obviously, there's still some questions you need to answer, but this is programmatically how you would go about doing this. Now let's go ahead and just open RStudio up so I can show you what happens given the options. Remember, under Tools and Options, I had selected to always save the workspace and to restore the most recently opened project at startup. So notice that when I open up, my script file is still there as I left it. My data is still there as I left it. I'm still in this folder. And so I've retained everything. Now, if I wanted to close the project, it'll go ahead and close everything, and now I've got a blank slate that I can go back to. If I want to open the project, actually let me cancel there. It had it as an option. Acupuncture. Right? Now, in order to get this data back, what I can do is I can simply highlight the reading in of the CSV file, run that again. I've got my data back. Now I can do all these other things, the structure and the summary. I can run those. That'll recreate that. And then I can go ahead and recreate and add the data back. And actually, let's go ahead and select all of this so that we get two versions of the dichotomous variable, one that's a factor and one that's a numeric. Go ahead and run that. And everything's back where I had. So in other words, if I close this project and I open it back up, you know, it retains everything. So I just wanted to point that out to everybody, and we'll be doing more with looking at these kinds of issues. Thanks.